Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my VCT America's Week 2 power rankings, I'll say. Technically going into Week 3, but you get the point. I think this week for America's was significantly better despite some teams being obscenely disappointing this week. I think there were some of the teams that were kind of on the edge of being kind of dropped down to the bottom. They played quite a bit better. So good to see that from this region where there's actually like some decent teams here now. But overall, if you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. Really helps me out, everything like that. Please go do that. Also, if you're more interested in how like I would rank these players individually, you can go check out my Twitter where I post weekly player rankings for America's EMEA and Pacific. So go check that out. Link is in the description. And yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so we'll start with this bottom tier of teams that are just glue eaters at this point. Like all of these teams are just bad. And that'll start with Loud. Oh, wait, not with Loud. Sorry, I changed this at the last second. We'll start with 2G, who did look a lot better this week. And having teams in the same tier as them is quite an accomplishment, honestly, compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. So I thought LZ's calling looked really nice. Specifically on Lotus, Pearl, it was a little more here and there. But the team just looked so much more like coordinated and like willing to do things. I mean, that period, and then just more willing to do things together as well. And he also just looked much more confident and like able to do things as an individual player. He was a lot better of a fragger and everything like that. So that was really nice to see. I also think the other four players had pretty nice games, but outside of LZ, there was nobody that was like shockingly good to me. Like I thought Oskia was good, I thought Cabrera was good, I thought Silence was good, and I thought PXS was pretty good. He definitely had more moments than like consistently good stuff, so he wasn't that great, but I did enjoy him, like watching him in his first game, and I would expect him to continue to get better. Then we'll talk about Loud now, who lost to 2G. I'm not quite putting them under 2G quite yet, just because it was 1 week where they lost 2G, and I would expect them to be better than they were this past week. But if they're not, then they're dropping under 2G next week. Just a horrible, horrible performance from this team. I don't know. Part of it felt like they just came into the game fully expecting that they would win no matter what they did, and that's just not what happened. Obviously, Vinny had a horrible game, both calling and individually. I mean, obviously, if you look at the stats, he was 29 or 20 for 39 and was 0-8 FKD playing Breach and KO. So, I mean, that's pretty bad. Cowan and Tui's, I thought, played okay. Not great. I mean, everybody's calling to bench Tui's right now for Luke Show. I mean, I think Tui's is fine as a Sentinel player. I don't think he's like that great by any means, but also I'm not super high on Luke Show, so I don't know if that's entirely like in my head, I guess, about benching Tui's for him. But that could be a good move for this team. Also, there was an interview with Vinny where apparently he talks about benching himself for Luke Show, which is not a good thing for this team, I don't think. But I think in terms of like a macro thing, my main issue with this team was like on Pearl, every single round on attack, whenever they tried to split A, they would do a 4-1 split where the guy in A main would just die because they never actually took A main control. So, I don't know. There was a lot of calling issues in this game and issues with what I would assume would be coaching as well. So it's not looking good for Loud. This was more about what we expected heading into the year from this team, but still like very disappointing considering what we have seen at kickoff. Then Furia, I mean, a very similar story as last week. They played a really, really nice map one. I guess it was a half against G2, but the map one against NRG was very nice. They looked genuinely really good on that map. on Lotus. I would expect some teams to start banning that against them because that seems like the only map they can really do anything on. But once you got to Pearl and Fracture, NRG just completely individually diffed them. I I mean, their Pearl was really bad, but I think they could have potentially won that, or maybe not won, but like done better on that map. But Energy ended up kind of just diffing them individually in some scenarios. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but overall, uh, kind of in the same spot with Furia. I mean, obviously, there's more of a sample size of them being bad in this game because Pearl and Fracture were worse than Ascent against G2, but also at the same time, like they did do fine on Lotus. So and Ascent wasn't necessarily good last week either. Then our last team in this glue tier, we have EG. No surprise here, I don't think. I don't really have anything to say about this team, honestly, other than the fact that I do still think they have pretty good macro play on Fracture. It looks like they still kind of have those like set play stuff that old EG did on that map, so that's nice to see. But I think their individuals just kind of got diffed against 100 Thieves, and 100 Thieves has some of that Fracture like stuff because they have Boostio and Zix from that EG team. And then yeah, kind of on that same topic, like I've just said it so many times with this EG team, this roster just does not have enough talent on it to be good. Even though if some players have some nice games, like I thought Nature specifically, he called a really good Fracture and he played a really good Fracture individually. Derek had some nice moments. Ye had some nice moments. But overall, I don't think this team has the talent to kind of be good.
All right, so we'll start our next tier of what like teams that I just don't know what's going on with them, and why they have to be this bad, and that's Lev. I mean, I don't think they played a horrific game against C9. They were bad. Don't get me wrong, and these roles are still bad. But I thought the game was fine. I don't know, man. Like Split, it felt like there was just a bunch of moments where C9 was getting into like a maybe slightly disadvantaged situation, and then just they completely diff them individually, and maybe Lev would mess up some micro moments. I do think they looked better this week than they did last week, but the Ascent game, they just didn't really have a chance to do anything on their attack side, so I don't fully blame them for that, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, obviously, I'm still rating them just above EG, Furia, Loud, and 2 Game, so I'm not super high on them. But I also think a lot of the people shitting on them and saying that they're garbage and they're going to be garbage for the rest of the year is a little bit extreme. Then we'll start my next tier of teams that are consistently inconsistent, and that'll start with NRG, who I thought Lotus, after having a good Lotus week 1 against C9, I thought Lotus was actually pretty bad from this team. Just a ton of individual mishaps from everybody on this team, really other than Som, honestly, who was just deadlifting them through that map. But other than that, I think they looked pretty solid. Still very sloppy, but on Pearl, they were able to really punish Furia, not playing very well on the defensive side macro-wise. And Ethan looked a lot better on this Yoru role. I do think that their macro was a lot better on Pearl in terms of like not giving the whole the whole map on defense for the little bit that they played it. I believe it was just a teeny tiny bit. Like they played like a few rounds. Yeah, they played 3 rounds of defense, but it did look a little bit better in those 3 rounds, so hopefully that starts to improve as well. And then on the attack side, FNS was like confidently taking timings as a lurker, which was very, very, very helpful for this team. Especially with the like Furia, like I don't know, over rotations and whatnot. I think is what I'm looking for here. But I do think their micro just needs to get better in terms of post plants and like trading and everything like that. And I think this team can genuinely be good. I don't think they're going to be like the top like 2 team in Americas that was promised, but I definitely think they can be a very solid team and a team that can go to international events and contend with some of these teams. Maybe not win, but maybe make like a top four or something like that on a good tournament or whatnot. But some of the Pearl rounds on attack side were like really close in terms of the clock, and Energy kind of just diffed Fury individually when they had like 2 or 3 people on the site, which just won't work this week against G2. So they're going to need to have a little bit more if they're going to even take a map off of G2. Obviously, nobody expects them to win, but yeah, they're going to need to show a little bit more in this week if they're going to have any chance to not get absolutely shit on. Then I have 100 Thieves, who is honestly a very similar, I mean, maybe not a similar team, but in a similar spot to Energy. They did look quite a bit better macro wise, but the micro is still not great. But there were some really, really good micro moments as well from this team. I do just want to say, Cryo individually, in terms of his shooting, was really good. But I do still think that his flexibility is very much hurting the team. Because their fracture defense, their literal only game plan was to push Asuna and Bustio out halls or arcade and force the other team to push the other side of the map, being tree or dish, right into Cryo's op. That was their only idea, it felt like. So that's not great. I mean, also, Cryo was whiffing a lot at the beginning of the game, so you'd hope he doesn't do that again against the better team. But that just, their defense felt so bad with this comp. Obviously, if you had a Killjoy, maybe you'd be able to do more crunches and kind of, I guess, like hold one area of the map a little bit harder instead of just TPing away and then only having the chamber trip for it. So obviously not ideal. This team was significantly better than the team that they were playing against. So kind of just need to see it again against maybe a better team. Who do they play this week? Loud. I mean, they could prove it against Loud, but I do doubt that. Then we have Crew. I think the individuals specifically looked a lot better, just like in terms of decision making and firepower wise, because Kesnet, who he looked like fully back in form compared to what he was at kickoff and at week 1. He's been really bad all year. Maybe not really bad. He has been not great all year. But he decided to turn up in this game against Sentinels. Almost just knocked over my cup of water on my desk. But he was playing the Yoru really well, I thought. And the Jet on Icebox was just a vintage Kesnet on Jet on Icebox performance, pretty much. It felt like this team just kind of cleared up all the slop from week 1. And all like the stupid individual moments specifically, where people would just kind of like push something for no reason or do something dumb. And I think Adverso's calling genuinely looked quite a bit better than John's on the other side, which is a very, I mean, maybe not a very, it is a high bar. And yeah, like John's looked at one of those like top callers in Americas, and Adverso kind of outcalled him in this game. So if they can continue that, this team will be in that top 3. I firmly believe that. I just need to see it again with how bad they were at week 1. Like that was horrific. Their week 1 performance. Also, again, as I just said, I do still believe this team was complete dog shit in week 1, but I feel like I overreacted to it, putting them down like in this like second to last tier. Then our last team in this tier is Cloud9. I think pretty obvious why they're in this tier if you look back at their past results. But for what they've shown in stage 1, I think they, like, if you're entirely basing it off of these 2 games, I think they should be above Sentinels. But they're looking a lot better again this week. Their Ascent comp just feels impossible to play against on the attack side. I'd be kind of surprised if other teams don't try to copy it. I mean, Talon already has, very unsuccessfully. I'll talk. Oh, Jesus. I'll talk about that in my Pacific video a little bit more, but that was really bad. But also, I felt like Vic kind of had a breakout game where, like, as week 1, he honestly didn't play very well, even though C9 kind of destroyed Energy. I really like the pickup of Vic, but it just wasn't paying off early, but now it does seem to be. If he can continue this, he would be probably one of the better smokes players in Americas. He'd get into that top tier with your, I mean, maybe not top, like the second tier, I guess. Like not with Sam and Bang, but like with Valen individually, with what's it called? Who is he? Xander, Genom, like those kind of guys. He'd be in that kind of conversation. And then also with him, Zeppa still looks good on new agents, playing the Vise this week and playing really well on it. Played the Yoru last week. If he can continue to play different stuff, Mitch is able to play Sova. This team could be really good because I think that's been one of the things with this team is they just refuse to get a good Sova player for whatever reason. But now that Mitch can actually learn how to play Sova, that could be a very big piece for this team. All right, and on to our last three teams here. We'll start with Sentinels, moving down one. I do have quite a bit to say about this team, so I'm actually going to skip to our next team, which everybody knows who it's going to be. I just want to talk a little bit about them, and then I'm going to maybe not fully rip into Sentinels because I don't think they're that bad, but there is some issues that I've brought up at the beginning of the year that are coming up now. But we'll start with MIBR. Every aspect, I think, of this team continues to look better and better each week. Except for Ospas, honestly, I thought he still was a little bit disappointing, but he was definitely better. Like, he missed a few op shots here and there, missed a few, like, rifle shots and everything like that. Just not ideal, but he still wasn't vintage Ospas in this game, which I'm not concerned about by any means. If anything, that is a good sign for this team because, like, once he actually plays at a super high level, this team might be able to contend with G2. And then I do think his Waylay was actually pretty good as well, but the agent still does not look good. Like there were some major issues with the way that they were playing with that. So I'd shelve that for now. Maybe try to get him to play the Yoru, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. That still is kind of a concern with me with this team is they're like probable. Like I would imagine Ospas is not willing to play Yoru, so not ideal there. But yeah, overall, really great performance from MIBR. Then I'll talk about Sentinels. I have a lot to say, which is kind of crazy for a team that is only moving down one spot. But I'll start with the good. Zekin and Bang still performing really well, and I do think John's mid rounding has been pretty decent. Still not like maybe where it was last year at the beginning, but still pretty good. But I do just want to talk about this team's roles for a little bit because that was my concern heading into the year, and it is very clearly showing up for them now. I don't understand why they brought in Narrate. He has been good this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Narrate is a bad player by any means, but he is not the player that this team should have picked up. But multiple times this year, Narrate has played an agent that he has never played before in his career. And that first game that he's played, he's been completely dog shit at it. Multiple times this year. You go back to the Omen on Abyss. Literally one of the worst individual performances all year of any player. Like, I genuinely mean that. I'm not exaggerating. He was horrible in that game. His breach at the start was bad. Not great, but he was just completely unable to frag on it. The Sky on Bind, it was bad, but not great. I don't know, man. And then now the Sova on Icebox. That was almost as bad as the Omen. Like it was in terms of strictly the util, it was almost as bad as the Omen. It wasn't quite as bad. Some of these agents he has learned to play better. Like the Breach, I don't think the fragging's quite there yet with the Breach, but it is still good. I thought the Sky, I think the Sky Unbind, if he plays it again, will be better. But obviously this map pool doesn't really call for a Sky on many maps, so should be fine. I've never been high on Narrate playing Duelist, even when he played in Tier 1. I didn't really think it was that great. And yeah, like that almost puts him at a Fade 1 trick. Like he can play the Omen on Abyss, but I would Mainly have that being in a double smokes comp. He can play Breach, he can play Sky, but his Sova is so bad. Like, I don't remember what round it was, but there's one round where he literally shoots the dart for belt on Icebox and he bounces it. Like, we're missing that dart in 2025. Like, that's something that I would expect a player to do in the beta of the game. Like, I don't know, man. I've played so much Sova on Icebox. I have never missed that dart. But I don't know. The one other thing with this team is like when they played their Lotus comp at kickoff against Loud and they lost 13-11, they played Yoru, Breach, Vise, Omen, Teo. Probably the most meta comp you can run on Lotus. They lost 13-11. Had some moments where the Loud individuals really popped off towards the end of that map and kind of got Loud through it. They probably should have won that map. You go to the next game. They switch up the comp. They play Raze, Fade, Vise, Viper, and Omen. They win. But if you look at the other side and see the comp that they're playing against, they are playing against a double duelist solo Breach comp in professional Valorant. They're playing as Omen, Breach, Jet, Raze, and Cypher. They win 13-7. They go to Bangkok. They get demolished by DRX on Lotus, playing that same comp that they just played against MIBR. They play Team Liquid. They do win on Lotus. I'll give them that. But Liquid was never really a good Lotus team. I don't know if they played it at all during, let me look. Actually, stats from event EMEA kickoff. Lotus. Okay, they did. Yeah, Liquid played Lotus twice, and that was with that Raze Reyna Clove comp with Nats on Fade. So, yeah, you beat Liquid on Lotus. Congrats. But they play it against Crew here, and they get kind of demolished 13-7. Like, just play the old comp. I don't get the issue. Is it because Narrate wasn't fragging on that role? Because he was 7-16 in this game. Oh, and Zekin's not getting good stats on the Yoru, so let's stop playing him on that entirely. It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I mean, I genuinely think even with all of this stuff, Sentinels is still probably the third best team in Americas. Do I think that they're going to win a trophy this year? Absolutely not. Like this, all of this stuff is not floor lowering stuff. It is ceiling lowering stuff. So like the best this team can possibly be is going to be something like the fifth, sixth best team in the world. So that's not ideal, obviously, with Sentinels' expectations, especially with the probable money that they spent on this roster, kind of buying out Narrate from Carbon Core, I believe. I believe he got bought out. I don't think it was that his contract ran out. But still, point stands. But I'll talk about G2. Just a bit more of a positive conversation. They look good, as they do. I'm not gonna spend 20 minutes talking about G2 every week because they are G2 and they're the best team in Americas, probably the best team in the world. And yeah, they're changing up comps, they're trying new stuff. I would imagine for maps like Ascent where they're trying the Waylay, maybe there's going to be something else coming up for playoffs that they're working on behind the scenes, but overall, still looking good. And yeah. All right, and now onto my pick'ems. We went 4 out of 6 last week with the just getting the 2-game and crew upsets wrong. I feel okay about that. Obviously, I wish I had not overreacted as much to crew, but even if I did, I still would have picked Sentinels over them. But very similar week to last week with a bunch of easy games, mainly because there is 4 horrific teams in this league. I'm picking Sentinels over EG, 100 Thieves over Loud. I think this has the most upset potential. Crew over 2-game, and Lev over Furia, even though I do not think Lev is very good. I just think the Lev individuals are just going to fully diff Furia if they completely fall apart in this game, they need to make significant roster changes mid-season. Um, and I like they absolutely have to do that. Like no doubt in my mind. But then there's another easy game because it is G2 playing against a okay team. I'm going to pick G2. I don't really think I need to explain myself for any of these games outside of maybe this one because Lev is not good. But this last game is C9 MIBR. I did pick C9 last week playing against Lev. I did not pick them against NRG. Part of me just doesn't want to doubt Cloud9 anymore and wants to pick them in this game. Because if I don't, then I'm going to pick them against Furia, and then I'm not going to pick them against G2, and then I'm probably not going to pick them in playoffs. But, I mean, let me look at the groups, actually. Let me see what this would do. This would put Cloud9 at 3-0. And MIBR probably barely into the playoff contention, depending on how badly... Wait. No, they should, yeah. They'll be like 4th at worst. I think Osboss just gets them through this game. I think that's kind of my thought process. It doesn't feel good. This is a true 50-50 game. I just don't trust Cloud9 still. I don't know if I ever fully will until they kind of win a trophy. Jeez. But yeah, overall 50-50 game. Not really sure who to pick there, so I just picked Osboss. Pretty simple there. And then the rest of the games are very, very, very self-explanatory. Um, but yeah, actually do quickly, since I didn't talk about it in my EMEA video, I do want to talk about my VFL team. I did make some changes here. I swapped out Bang for, who was it? Who did I swap him out for? Sugetsu. That's who it was. I had Sugetsu in this other controller slot. I swapped him out for Bang. I kind of just did this because Sen plays, I think it's 2-game Loud and EG is their last 3 games. Yeah, EG Loud 2-game is their last 3. So he's going to be playing against some terrible teams. He's going to get a ton of map points probably, and I'd imagine he'd be very good. So yeah, these 4 Americas are my power rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. These are my Pickems, and this is my VFL team. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, everything like that. It really helps me out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.